ladies and gentlemen, even though we weren't really going to be doing a vendor spotlight tonight, or for State Comic Con, but we, in the process of wandering around today, hanging out, we realized we didn't really get a chance to speak to anybody today. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a vendor spotlight, artist spotlight, creator spotlight, call it as you will, with this gentleman right here. Oh, there we are. You're in frame. What's your name, sir?
My name is Dennis Robinson.
Get this a little bit closer. Don't worry. I see. What was your name again?
Dennis Robinson.
And you are the creator of what?
Lycan Solomon's Odyssey. It's a graphic novel series about the world's first werewolf.
So is this your first book?
Yeah. So I have 2 books out now in the series, but yeah, it's the first book.
And your first time here at Force State?
Yeah, so my first book came out last year in July, so I just started vending in August of last year, so anything before August is now new territory for me. So yeah, this is the first time here.
Damn you, God! Damn you! Every year! So, sorry, that's been a running joke since last year. With all the announcements, it was just like, oh, the voice of God is happening, you know? Then all of a sudden wound up, oh, God, the voice of God. But still, vending, being a vendor, not just an independent creator, but a vendor, a new vendor. What have you learned so far as a vendor, new vendor, promoting your stuff?
Promoting your stuff, it really depends on the type of person that you are. So, like, some people can get out in front of the table and flag people down and, like, stop you and make you talk. I sort of go with the approach, if somebody stops by the table enough and, like, lingers a bit, then I start the elevator pitch with just a simple, like, do you like werewolves? And if they say yes, then we lead into the rest of the elevator.
It's the whole, I think there's the whole aspect of being one part salesman, one part carny.
Yeah.
And because I've seen some folks that just sit behind the table and they just go like, well, we don't understand why no one's approaching the table, and they do get some sales, but it's very few. Other points like, hey, I see you, like you said, I see you looking at the table. Are you interested in werewolves? Or how? No, they'll start really.
That's part of why I stand up. Is that you're more approachable if you're standing, because you're like on eye level with people, as opposed to like sitting in a chair, like in the back or whatever. Like when I go to conventions, I usually just avoid, because it's like you were saying, carnival, where you just avoid. Like if you don't feel like going to a certain place, you just don't make eye contact and you just avoid.
We'll get back to that because we here at the show have show ADHD.
Sure.
Please, again, what is Lycan Solomon's Odyssey about?
So it's a story about the world's first werewolf. So it's a mixture of horror, mythology, and folklore, and it explores different regional mythologies and monsters and creatures from all over the world, different time periods. So the first book's 8,000 BC, and then each book moves a little bit further down the line. So we look at Gilgamesh, Egypt, Greece, all kinds of stuff like that.
And pretty much the main character's journey through from beginning to end and how...
Yep, and then him just trying to, figure out what he is, how do I cure myself, or how do I control it, how do I not hurt other people. Like, it's a whole duality thing where, you know, he's not in control when he changes. He just blacks out and wakes up. And
that being said, what part of the lore of vampires, werewolves have you taken? The basic.
So in the universe, anyways, it's not set up yet, but I do plan on having every type of werewolf from like movies or culture, like in the series. Like they all exist in the same world. They're just like different strains or like different, you know, types, like breeds, almost like with dogs sort of thing. With mine, it's more of like a Faustian deal, since it had to start somewhere. So I have it more of a Faustian deal than he was just like, oh, he's just bitten by another werewolf, that whole thing. But it does have a lot of the same sort of werewolf lore in terms of like silver is a weakness, has no control when he changes, feral, full moon. Mine's a little different, that he only changes when it's the full moon, like at midnight, and then he changes back at like dawn of the next day. But other than that, I would say the story's fairly different in that it goes into all kinds of different regions and time periods and stuff like that.
As you said, it's sampling a little bit of the the lore that's there.
Yeah.
That's what I like to see is someone playing with the lore, fiddling with, I don't want to say fiddling, but sampling, using what's there as part of it. That's kind of why I like the movie Cure, I think it's called, a little bit, where they, not only do the werewolves pass the disease, if you will, on by biting, it was also, they said, it's also an STD.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, that's an interesting take on it. Yeah, that's new. They added to the lore. Like
I find with anything, if you're going to tweak things or mess with them, just make it so that the rules of your world are easily understandable and that you stick to the rules. Like, if you set up the rule, it's an STD, okay, that's how it works then. If like someone then later has sex with one and they don't get it, okay, well now your rules don't make any sense anymore.
Right.
And it does, so I would say, I'm all for like tweaking things, going in different directions, just make sure that it's easily understandable.
I said that's what I love about sometimes someone adding a little bit to, like posing a question in the movie, like, what if it was an STD as well?
Yeah.
Or along those lines.
Yeah.
And
there
it's
was
like
a ghost movie like that too, where I forget what it was called. It Follows, I think.
Yeah.
Where if you had sex with the person, then the ghost would follow them around and kill them, and so it just passed through sex that way.
And it was also, I think, Dracula 2000. They added to the lore as to try to explain things, like the person that they were, Dracula himself wasn't Vlad the Impaler. It was literally the person who betrayed Jesus, and the reason why it was literally Judas was the vampire, was Dracula. It was like, why did he hate the sun? Because he hung himself at or unalived himself at dawn. At dawn.
Sure.
The reason why vampires hate silver, because he beat 12 pieces of silver. And why does he hate the crucifix? Because he was because the crucifixion. Therefore, it adds to the lore. It's like they took the lore, like how do we fit the lore into the narrative instead of the narrative into the lore, and it works. So I'm glad that you're trying to do that, or see the lore and try to work into it or adjust it so that I'm happy that you are doing it and that you have a weird and interesting fellow next door in regards to help to sell things. That kind of makes people stop and wonder. So.
Well, I took his legs off because people kept asking if it was a real person. And I'm like, it's so skinny, how would it be a real person? But I got that question more often than I would ever have guessed that I would get that question.
It kind of adds to a little bit of marketing, a little bit different. And
I like to take pictures with it with the kids and all that shit.
One of the things I did when I was set up last year is that a lot of events I've been to, some folks have candy.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, what if you can't? What if you're diabetic? You can't really have candy. What if you don't want candy?
Yeah.
Everybody has candy.
Sure.
What if you're allergic to something in the candy?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a geek podcast. Get something geeky to hand out. So I went online, got dice sets in bulk, and I put them in the bag. You put a business card in there, put them on the table.
That's a great idea.
And at a local show down in Martinsburg, I set up promoting, had the stuff in the bowl, and they're like, have you got this color? And I went, I don't know. Do I? And I pull out the entire box and set it next to the bowl, and just to see the folks' eyes just light up, because it keeps them there.
Oh yeah.
And that's what you want to do is keep them there, because when they're there, if they're rooting down, get that one person. I'm uncomfortable not saying anything, so please, it adds to the sales pitch.
Sure, no, 100%.
So
that's a great idea, good way to do that. Yeah, we've been trying to think of something similar for. I also have a D&D podcast, and so I was trying to think of I'm here at this table, I should be able to give something out for, the podcast too. We just haven't been able to decide on one thing over another thing.
I just got sets of it's just a 7 set. Just put a card in, put it in the baggie. There you go.
I threw that idea out there, and they said, no, it needs to be more. It needs to be bigger. I'm like, okay.
Let me put it like this. I went with the dice.
Yeah.
There's a I'm not sure where she's set up. She does dice trays. I mean, they're like handcrafted dice trays. And
Is it like the ones with like the skulls and stuff like that?
I'm not the 3D printing.
Oh, okay, not the 3D.
She does. It's all wood.
It's
all,
over there.
It's down there.
Yeah.
What they've done, yeah, that's her down there. Last year she had, in essence, D2s. It was her logo. The logo was the 1, and the 2 was like a QR code for her site that you could flip.
Yeah, we wanted to do a custom dice a while back. We never did get around to it, where it was a D20 with all 1s except for one side that had our logo on it. So it's just like, because our show is called Botched, and they roll 1s a lot of the time, and it usually ends horribly. So it's like, all right, well, let's have D20s that are mostly 1s. And if you can manage to get the logo, that's a crit 20, and it's like mega crit 20, basically.
But for the sake of this, we'll end this. It's nice spoken. Where can they find your book?
So you can find Lycan Solomon's Odyssey on hiveheadstudios.com. It's there digitally as well as physically. You could sample the first 18 pages digitally for free, in fact, of the first book. But yeah, www.hiveheadstudios.com.
And it's nice meeting you, sir.
Yeah, it's nice
and
meeting you
I'm going to grab your card so I'm able to link your stuff.
Yeah, no
Let me end this here.